Gregory with 5-Minute Catholic Apologetics, where 5 minutes of your time may get you to the divine. Today we're going to talk about Pope's private revelations and compare them to some of the Protestant denominations whose leaders also have private revelations. Now, before we begin, let's start with a prayer. In nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritui Sancti. Amen. Gloria et Patri et Filii et Spiritui Sancto, secutor in principio et nunc et semper et in saecula saeculorum. Amen. A couple compendium episodes that would be good for this are the ones on the fallacies of the popes, misconceptions that people have on the pope, so I'll include those in here. So this episode I would like to make relatively short. So Catholic Church has always taught that public revelation ended with the book of Revelation, with the end of the New Testament. And so we are not required to believe anything that came out of private revelation after the completion of the New Testament. So this would predominantly and most importantly include any private revelations of Marian apparitions or apparitions of Jesus. Think of the Sacred Heart of Jesus and other things like that. Now, we can choose to believe them, and certainly the Church has approved certain ones, most famously Our Lady of Lourdes, Our Lady of Fatima, Akita, Our Lady of Guadalupe, and these things, because they're in line with the magisterial teaching of the Church. But you yourself don't have to believe any private revelations that have been revealed to any particular person. Now let's focus on papal revelations. There have been some popes that have had revelations. We're not required to believe any of them. Most of the papal revelations we don't even hear about. The most famous one maybe is what happened to Pope Leo XIII, which we'll talk about at the end. But we are not like the Mormons or some of the more, I guess you could say, apocalyptic Protestant groups, where a person, the leader, will be like, I had a vision from God. God told me this. And the president of the LDS, of the Mormons, still have this belief. They had I think the most recent one was in the 70s when they said they can allow black people into the church. We don't have this where the Pope, we believe the Pope has this ongoing communication with God, and whatever he hears from God, he tells the people, and it's enacted essentially into law. We do not believe that. We have never believed that. And I think it's good because a lot of the private revelations, I mean, if you think of the more kind of apocalyptic groups like Jim Jones or David Koresh, you can see how this is misabused or how this is abused quite often, because God told me that I can, sleep with your wives, or God told me that I can take more money from you, or God said the world's going to end in, 1948, like a lot of the cults, and then it never happens. Right? So you can see why private revelation would be problematic. So no, we believe that public revelation ended with the book of the Apocalypse at the end of the New Testament, and all that's needed in terms of public revelation ended there. Now, of course, we do have the deposit of faith and so forth, but just in terms of public versus private revelation. Now, let's talk about Leo XIII. So Leo XIII was the pontificate, the Pope, I should say, the latter third of the 19th century. And he had a vision in 1884. This is probably the most famous one. We'll call it the Leo IX vision. And he was finished doing Mass, and there were a couple of people present. And at the end of Mass, he was like in a fixation, a trance for like 10 minutes. And then after he came out of it, people asked, like, what happened? And he's like, well, I had this vision, and I heard this voice, kind of two voices, a guttural voice and a kind of a more nicer voice. And apparently, according to the Leo, it was a conversation that the devil had with God, kind of like a la Job. But essentially, we're not going to spend too much time on the revelation because it's not that important. But in the revelation, the Pope said that he could destroy the church, give him 75 to 100 years, and God said, or whoever it was, the angelic voice, somebody in the Trinity, for all we know, said, no, you can have as much time as you need, and so forth. And so he gave him this permission. But whether or not, the more radical right would say, well, 1884, 75 years from now is Vatican Council II, and then the abuses of Vatican II. I'm not here to agree or disagree. I don't know. I wasn't there. It's private revelation. Who knows? But out of this revelation, he wrote the St. Michael the Archangel prayer. And actually, I should have done that prayer at the beginning of this episode. Because he was so scared by this vision that then he announced that everybody should say this prayer at the end of daily Mass or low Mass. And we did this until Vatican II. that we would say the St. Michael prayer at the end of Mass, and certainly some of you still go to churches where they do say the St. Michael prayer after daily Mass or even on Sunday Mass. That requirement went away, wait for it, after Vatican II, the requirement to do it on Sunday Mass. We used to do the last Gospel and the St. Michael prayer after Mass, and that kind of went away in the 60s. But either way, in closing, so if you want more information on Leo's vision, you can certainly look it up. But we've had popes that have had visions. We don't have to believe it. Anything that comes out of it, we don't have to believe it. Of course, the church is going to, and its authority given scripturally, you can see in Matthew 16, Matthew 18, will approve it or not approve it. But just understand, like, a lot of the kind of apocalyptic stuff, and like there are Catholic apocalyptic leaders out there. I'm not going to name their names, but they're out there, and a lot of them are very apocalyptic about the future, and a lot of them are about, the church going into apostasy, and they're having visions about this. And Our Lady of Bayside was a famous fraud woman in Long Island who said she had visions from the Virgin Mary, and that was found to be fraud. I mean, there's a lot of fraudulent ones, so just be very careful on Protestant or Catholic leaders that are telling you that they're having visions, either from the Virgin Mary or from Jesus, or have communications with God. Just be very kind of wary of that, because we don't really need to hear those messages. All we need for Christian living has already been revealed in public revelation. So private revelation, if approved by God and if it's consistent with church teaching, it's great. It's something that can supplement your spiritual exercises, like let's say the rosary or whatever, but they're not required. They're not required to adhere to. Guys, post in the comments. Let me know if you know about the St. Michael prayer or the vision of Pope Leo. I'd like to hear from you. Hit the notification button, subscribe, and share with others. Until next time, take care. God bless and pray.